Welcome to Creepy Night, where shadows speak and stories never truly die. Tonight, we open another tale, one whispered through fog, born of fear, and written in blood. So, turn off the lights and listen.
The carriage reached Ravenshollow Manor just as the sun dipped below the moors, bleeding its last light into the mist. The road, long and narrow, wound between fields of dead heather and skeletal trees. Inside the carriage sat Eleanor Vale, her fingers curled tightly around the strap of her satchel. The ride had been long and silent, the driver unwilling to speak of the manor she was returning to. It had been 5 years since she'd last crossed its threshold. 5 years since her mother's death. And yet, the letter that summoned her back had carried her mother's handwriting. "Come home, my darling. I found something beautiful. Remember." Eleanor had read the words again and again, her heart torn between grief and disbelief. Her mother was gone, buried beneath the yew tree behind the chapel. So who had sent the letter? The carriage rolled to a stop before the manor gates. The driver cleared his throat, refusing to meet her eyes. "You're certain you want to go in there, miss?" Eleanor glanced at the looming shape of Ravenshollow, its high windows dark, its roof line jagged against the fading sky. "I was born here," she said. "If I can't return, who can?" The driver swallowed. "Aye, but not all who leave that place come back whole." Before she could answer, he snapped the reins. The carriage lurched forward, vanishing down the road, leaving her alone in the fog. The manor gates opened easily, though the iron was rusted and cold to the touch. As she crossed the courtyard, the last of the light faded, and the great oak doors of Ravenshollow groaned as they yielded to her hand. The air inside was colder than the night outside. Dust motes swirled in the lantern light, drifting through a hall lined with portraits of the Vale family. Solemn faces, oiled dark eyes, expressions carved in dignity and sorrow. Eleanor's footsteps echoed through the silence, and then she saw it. At the end of the corridor stood a mirror taller than a man, framed in gold so dark it was almost black. Its surface shimmered faintly, though no candle burned near it. Something about it drew her forward. The faint curve of glass, the way her reflection seemed slightly delayed, as if it moved just after she did. A small note was pinned to the frame. The handwriting was unmistakable. "Do not look too long, my darling. It looks back." Eleanor's hand trembled as she touched the glass. It was cold. "I didn't." Tooed. Cold. And yet beneath the chill was a pulse. Faint, steady, like a heartbeat. A door creaked somewhere above her. "Mother," she called, though she knew it was impossible. No answer. The silence returned, heavy as snow. She turned to leave, but her reflection did not. It lingered, eyes fixed on her, mouth curving into the faintest smile. Her blood froze. She stumbled backward, striking the wall behind her. The lantern in her hand flickered. The reflection raised its hand slowly, mirroring the motion of a greeting. Then it whispered, its voice soft and clear, echoing from within the glass. "Welcome home, Eleanor. That night, she could not sleep. Every corner of the house seemed to breathe. Every window hummed with faint vibration. When she closed her eyes, she could still see the mirror in her mind, and the reflection that smiled when she did not. At some point, exhaustion overtook her. She dreamed of the manor years ago, bright and warm, her mother's laughter echoing through the halls. But when she turned in the dream, the laughter had changed. It came from behind the mirror, from someone who sounded like her, but was not. She woke before dawn, drenched in sweat. The house was silent. Then came a faint tapping from downstairs. 3 knocks. A pause. 3 more. She rose, wrapped her shawl around her shoulders, and descended the staircase. The hall was bathed in gray light. The mirror stood where she had left it, tall, still, waiting. And there, within the glass, stood her reflection. But it was smiling again. This time, its hand rested on the other side of the glass, pressed against it as if inviting her to do the same. "Who are you?" she whispered. The reflection mouthed her words perfectly. Then, slowly, its expression changed. The eyes softened. The lips moved again, forming words she did not speak. "Let me out." Morning broke over Ravenshollow in pale silver light. The mist that had blanketed the moors all night drifted lazily across the hills, wrapping the manor in its soft embrace. Eleanor had not slept. She had sat by the window for hours, watching the faint outline of dawn, feeling that peculiar pull, the sense that something inside the house was quietly waiting for her. The mirror, even now, from across the hall, it seemed to hum faintly in the morning light, as though the glass itself was alive. When she had first touched it, she could have sworn she felt something. A pulse, a warmth, almost like the echo of her own heartbeat. Yet, she told herself it was only imagination, sleep-deprived nerves, the effect of grief and solitude. Still, she found herself drawn toward it. When she stood before the mirror again, her reflection looked as tired as she felt. Eyes rimmed with sleeplessness, hair falling loose from its braid. "You look as though you've seen a ghost," she whispered to her reflection, attempting a smile. The reflection smiled back, perfectly synchronized this time. But as she studied it longer, she noticed something strange. The background in the mirror seemed different. Behind her reflection, the hall appeared brighter, the portraits on the walls uncracked, the chandelier glittering with lit candles instead of cobwebs. Ravenshollow as it had once been. "An illusion," she murmured. A trick of the light?" And yet, when she stepped closer, she could almost smell the faint trace of lavender and beeswax, her mother's favorite scent. She touched the glass. Warm. The surface rippled faintly under her fingertips, like water disturbed by a gentle breeze. For a moment, she thought she saw movement within it, figures passing through the hall beyond, elegant and slow, as though trapped inside another time. Her breath caught. Is this memory? It felt impossible. And yet, every detail was real. Her mother's laughter echoing faintly, the glint of silver at the edge of a dinner table, a melody from the old piano drifting through the air. The mirror wasn't showing ghosts. It was showing what had been. Hours passed as she stood before it, watching the scenes shift. The mirror seemed to turn its own pages. Childhood birthdays, her mother's garden in summer, her father reading by firelight. Each reflection shimmered briefly before dissolving into another. At first, the memories filled her with warmth, but slowly, she began to notice things that didn't belong. Subtle changes in the faces of the people she remembered. Their smiles lasted too long. Their eyes followed her, even when she moved away from the glass. And in one reflection, just one, her mother's image turned and looked directly at her, lips moving soundlessly. Eleanor's pulse quickened. "What are you trying to tell me?" The answer came not in sound but in motion. Her mother's reflection pointed upward toward the second floor of the manor. She left the mirror reluctantly, heart pounding as she climbed the stairs. The upper hall was dark and narrow, the floorboards creaking softly under her weight. At the end of the corridor, she found a door she did not recognize. The wood was new, its frame clean of dust, as though it had been added after her departure. When she turned the handle, the hinges opened with surprising ease. Inside was a small study, sunlit, neat, untouched by decay. A single desk stood by the window, and on it lay a leather-bound book. The same sigil that crowned the mirror's frame, a small circle entwined with 3 lines, was carved into its cover. Eleanor opened it. The pages were filled with elegant handwriting, her mother's. To see one's true self, one must look not into glass, but through it. The mirror remembers what the mind forgets. Eleanor turned the page. Sketches filled the margins, studies of light, reflection, and geometry. But among them were drawings of the mirror itself, annotated with notes. A window into memory, an echo of the soul's reflection. The glass listens. Her throat tightened. "Mother, what did you do?" The last entry caught her eye, written in hurried, uneven strokes. "If I fail to return, tell her not to break the mirror. It is not a prison. It is the path." The sun had begun to set by the time Eleanor returned to the hall. The mirror waited, silent and serene. The golden light of dusk touched its surface, and once again it shimmered like living water. She stared at her reflection, at the faint glow behind the glass, at the house as it once had been, vibrant and alive. And then, faintly, she saw another figure standing beside her reflection, her mother's. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. "You're still here, aren't you?" The reflection nodded once. "Then, show me the truth." The glass brightened, the air humming softly around her. The scent of lavender filled her lungs, and the light deepened until it seemed to come from everywhere at once. When she opened her eyes again, she was no longer standing in the ruined hall. Ravenshollow was whole, and her mother was waiting for her. The air inside the reflection shimmered with light. Eleanor felt neither warmth nor cold, only stillness, as though the world itself had paused to let her breathe. When she looked around, she realized she was standing in the grand hall of Ravenshollow as it had been in her childhood, bright, alive, and filled with music. The chandeliers burned with steady flame, the air scented with fresh lilies. Voices drifted faintly from distant rooms. Soft laughter, the sound of footsteps, the rustle of silk and paper. She touched her hand to her chest, half expecting her fingers to pass through her own body. But no, she was solid. Real. Tell. Chi. The mirror had not swallowed her. It had remembered her. "Mother," she whispered. No one answered, but a gentle breeze brushed her cheek, carrying with it the scent of lavender and old books. She wandered through the house, each room a perfect reconstruction of her memory, perhaps even better than memory itself. The colors were brighter, the air lighter. There were no cobwebs or cracks, no trace of ruin or time. And yet, something about it felt fragile, like a painting rendered on mist. When she entered the library, she found the fire already lit. The light danced upon the shelves, casting long shadows across the floor. A woman stood before the hearth. "Mother!" The woman turned. Her face was as Eleanor remembered, serene, intelligent, kind. Wani. The same dark hair, the same gentle eyes that seemed always to know more than they said. But when she spoke, her voice was soft and distant, like a memory spoken through glass. "You came back, my darling." Eleanor's throat tightened. "You wrote to me." The woman smiled faintly. "I asked the mirror to call you when the time was right." Eleanor took a hesitant step forward. "What is this place? Am I dreaming?" Her mother shook her head. "Not a dream, a reflection. The house remembers us here. Everything we were, every word, every hope. It stays. The mirror holds it all." Eleanor's eyes drifted to the great window overlooking the moors. The fog outside glowed faintly in the reflected light. "So, this is the past?" she asked. "It's more than that," her mother said. "It's what remains when the past refuses to fade. Ravenshollow is built on memory, and memory has its own light." "Nah." Eleanor looked down at her hands. "If this is memory, then you am part of it," her mother finished softly. A thought that never left. "But you, Eleanor, you are alive. You can walk between what was and what is. That's why you were called. Dear that Sir, eh? Called?" Her mother smiled again, though her expression was tinged with sorrow. "There are truths that were hidden from you. The mirror was never meant to frighten. It was meant to protect." "Protect what?" "Us," her mother said simply. "Whoa. And those who came before." She reached out, her hand passing through Eleanor's cheek like a ripple of warmth. "When you were a child, I asked the mirror to keep our memories safe. But it does not only hold joy, it holds grief too. The things we refuse to face. The secrets of our life." Eleanor frowned. "Secrets?" Her mother nodded toward the far wall. "Look." Oh. The mirror that had brought her here stood there too, though its surface now shone like polished silver. Within it, scenes shifted rapidly. Her father at his desk, the two of them walking the garden paths, and then a door she did not recognize. "What is that?" Eleanor asked. "The door to the west wing," her mother said quietly. "It was sealed before you were born." Your father feared what it held. What did it hold? The truth about the Vale bloodline, her mother replied. About why Ravenshollow remembers. The images in the mirror blurred, then focused again on a scene Eleanor had never witnessed. Her father standing before the same mirror, speaking softly to someone unseen. His reflection moved differently than he did. Its gestures reversed, its eyes full of light. Her mother's voice trembled. Your father tried to command the reflection instead of understanding it. He wanted to use memory to change the past. But the mirror does not obey. It listens, and it remembers everything. Eleanor stared at the shifting glass. He wanted to rewrite history. Yes, to undo what had been lost. But the mirror does not give. It only shows. The more he asked of it, the more it showed him what he had forgotten. The cost of his choices, the pain he tried to bury. Her mother's eyes glistened. He could not bear it. And so the west wing was locked, the mirror veiled, and the house began to fade. Auntie, Eleanor stepped closer to her mother. Then why bring me here? Because you are the only one who can restore what was broken, her mother said. The mirror responds to truth, not power. You carry both our memories and the courage to face them. She reached for Eleanor's hand. For the briefest moment, their fingers met, and then the air shivered and her mother's form began to fade. Wait, Eleanor cried. Don't leave me again. Her mother's voice lingered, soft as a sigh. Find the door, my darling. And when you open it, look with your heart, not your eyes. Niño. Go. The room dissolved into light. Eleanor blinked and found herself standing once more in the real Ravenshollow. Dust drifted through the air. The chandeliers were dark, the portraits cracked, the fog thick outside the windows. The mirror stood before her, silent and still. But now, in its depths, she could see faintly the outline of another door, a real one, hidden somewhere within the manor. The west wing. And this time, she would find it. The storm had returned by evening. Rain whispered against the windows of Ravenshollow, and every gust of wind made the old timbers sigh, as if the house itself remembered the conversation Eleanor had just lived through. She sat before the mirror, the lantern beside her guttering low. Its light trembled over the glass, revealing again the faint outline of a door, half hidden, half inviting, set somewhere deep within the western corridor. For a long while she only watched it, uncertain whether she was brave enough to follow where memory led. But then she thought of her mother's last words. Look with your heart, not your eyes. So she rose, wrapped her shawl tight around her shoulders, and crossed the hall toward the forbidden side of the manor. Dust drifted through the air like ash. The portraits here were unfamiliar, older, their pigments dulled by centuries. None of them bore the gentle melancholy of her mother's generation. These faces were sterner, proud and watchful, their painted gazes seeming to measure her worth. Each step she took stirred the scent of old cedar and rain-damp stone. The corridor narrowed, leading to a door sealed with heavy iron bolts. She touched the handle. It was warm. The bolts slid free with a soft metallic sigh, though she had not moved them. When the door opened, the smell of age and dust gave way to something different. A stillness so complete, it seemed alive. Beyond lay a circular chamber, lined with mirrors of every shape and size. Some were fractured, others whole. Candle sconces dotted the walls, their flames dim yet endless in reflection. At the center stood a single pedestal bearing a small journal bound in pale leather. Eleanor approached slowly. The cover was embossed with the Vale crest, but the name written within made her pause. Elias Vale, her father. She turned the first page. To the one who comes after me. The mirrors remember because I could not. What they show is not punishment, but mercy. I leave them for you, my daughter, so you may forgive what I could not face. Her throat tightened. Forgive? For what? As she read further, the story unfolded not as confession, but as understanding. Her father had discovered that every mirror in Ravenshollow carried a fragment of memory, moments preserved by those who had lived here before. He believed the West Wing was a sanctuary for memory itself, a place where the house collected the feelings its inhabitants could no longer bear. When grief becomes too great, he had written, it spills into the glass. The mirror keeps it so the heart may go on. Eleanor closed the journal and looked around. Hundreds of reflections shimmered faintly. Faces of her ancestors, glimpses of their joys, their regrets. Each one was an echo of a life unfinished. For the first time, she understood. Ravenshollow was not cursed. It was compassionate. A low hum filled the chamber, rising from the mirrors themselves. Their surfaces rippled, and one by one they began to align, turning toward the far wall, until they formed a single, seamless reflection. In that reflection stood her mother, clear and radiant, the light of the candles bending around her like dawn. Eleanor, the image said, you've come to where memory ends. Tears blurred Eleanor's vision. Then this is goodbye. Her mother smiled. No, child, this is understanding. We are not trapped here. We are remembered. And remembrance is another form of light. The image extended a hand, and for an instant, the glass beneath it glowed like sunrise on water. Take what you have learned, and let the house rest. Eleanor reached out, her fingertips brushing the mirrored surface. Warmth poured through her. A wave of every memory she had ever loved, every kindness her parents had given her, every sorrow that had shaped her. It was not pain. It was peace. When she opened her eyes, she was kneeling on the cold floor of the hall. The west wing door stood open behind her, and the rain outside had quieted to a gentle mist. The mirrors within the chamber no longer reflected faces, only soft light, pale and steady. She rose, feeling lighter than she had in years. The air smelled of lavender and candle smoke. At the far end of the corridor, the great mirror awaited her one final time. Its surface was calm, her own reflection looking back with quiet strength. "Thank you," she whispered. The mirror did not answer, but its light deepened for a heartbeat, as though it were breathing with her. Then it grew still. That night, Eleanor lit every candle in the house. Their glow filled Ravenshollow until the manor looked alive again, its windows shining across the moors like stars returned to earth. She sat at her father's desk, opened his journal, and began to write, not of ghosts or curses, but of what the house had taught her. that remembering is a kind of mercy, and that no love is ever truly lost as long as it is kept within the heart. The days that followed were unlike any Eleanor had known. Ravenshollow was quiet, peaceful, almost watchful, as if the house were relearning how to breathe. She moved through its rooms without fear now, noticing how light clung to the edges of mirrors and how each reflection seemed softer, warmer. The echoes that had once unsettled her were gone. In their place lingered something gentler, a whisper of gratitude. Every morning she would find a single mirror faintly glowing with sunlight, and when she touched the glass, she would glimpse a memory, never of sorrow now, but of small joys. Her mother arranging flowers, her father reading beneath the window, the servants laughing in the courtyard. The house had begun to remember kindly. While tidying her father's study one afternoon, Eleanor discovered a sealed envelope wedged behind a stack of ledgers. The parchment was brittle, the wax cracked with age. Inside lay a short letter written in her father's careful hand. "If our daughter should ever inherit this place, let her know that Ravenshallow's mirrors are not chains, but keepers of our light. When memory overwhelms the living, the glass will hold it until love returns." Beneath the signature was a simple line drawn in ink, a circle intersected by 3 lines, the same symbol etched into the mirror's frame. Eleanor traced it with her fingertip. The sign pulsed faintly beneath her touch, and she felt the quiet hum of the manor respond. The mirror was awake, but no longer demanding. It was listening. In the weeks that followed, Eleanor began to learn the language of light. She discovered that when a candle was placed before the great mirror at dusk, the flame would multiply across its surface until every other mirror in the house caught the glow. Each evening, she repeated the ritual, and with every flicker of flame, she could feel the manor's walls easing, the wood expanding, the glass sighing softly. The memories that lived in the mirrors no longer trapped her. They guided her. When she stood before them, she could sense emotions more than images: love, hope, remorse, forgiveness. And she began to understand. The Vale family had always been custodians of memory. Generation after generation, they had built Ravenshollow not to contain spirits, but to preserve the story of their lives, to pass it forward in quiet reflection. Her father's failure had been his fear. He had tried to command what was meant only to be tended. Eleanor's task was different. She would keep, not control. Word spread through the valley that the manor no longer wept at night. Curious villagers began to walk the outer paths again, and one morning a small group arrived at the gate carrying flowers. They told Eleanor that their grandparents had once worked for her family, that they remembered songs her mother used to play on the piano, that they had missed the sound. So, she opened the doors. For the first time in decades, Ravenshollow welcomed laughter. The visitors moved through its halls in awe, whispering that the mirrors made them feel lighter, that the air seemed filled with stories. Eleanor watched quietly as a child touched one of the smaller mirrors and smiled, saying she'd seen her own grandmother's face smiling back. The house had begun sharing its light. That evening, when the last guest had gone and the valley lay hushed beneath twilight, Eleanor returned to the great mirror. The reflection that met her was calm. Behind her own image glowed countless faint shapes. Her family, the house's former keepers, all watching with serene affection. "I understand now," she whispered. "You were never meant to hold pain. You were meant to hold remembrance." The surface shimmered, and words appeared across the glass like breath upon frost. "Keep the light, Gaia." Eleanor smiled through tears. "I will." She took the small veil sigil from her father's desk and pressed it against the mirror. The lines of the symbol flared gently, and a ripple of warmth spread through the room. The board floors beneath her feet vibrated like a low chord of music, and the glow from the mirror traveled up the staircase, touching every other pane of glass in the manor. Ravenshollow had accepted its new keeper. Night settled softly over the moors. The rain had ceased, leaving the air cool and clear. From her window, Eleanor could see the valley lights glimmering below, villages returning to life after so many years of fear. She wrote in her journal, "Memory is not a shadow. It is a lantern we pass from hand to hand. When my time comes, may the mirrors remember me kindly." Then she rose, crossed to the great mirror one final time, and whispered, "Good night, Mother. Good night, Father." The mirror brightened for a heartbeat, a shimmer of acknowledgement, before settling into calm silver once more. And as she turned away, she caught her reflection smiling. Her own smile now, free and steady. The winter that followed was mild, as though the valley itself had decided to rest. Snow came only once, soft and fleeting, leaving the moors brushed in white before dawn melted it away. Eleanor spent those months quietly tending to the house. She mended what was broken, polished the woodwork, and reopened the library shutters so sunlight could spill through once more. Ravenshollow had begun to breathe with her rhythm, its silence no longer hollow, but full. Each morning when she passed the great mirror, she would pause to whisper a greeting. And each evening, before extinguishing the last lamp, she would see her mother's faint reflection in the farthest corner of the glass, smiling like the edge of a dream. Word of the manor's renewal had spread beyond the village. Travelers came from neighboring towns to see the House of Mirrors, as they now called it. Some brought gifts, candles, poems, old portraits they believed once belonged to the Vale family. Eleanor welcomed them all. She guided each guest through the halls, telling them stories not of haunting, but of remembrance. She showed them the West Wing, now open and full of light, and explained how the mirrors kept fragments of those who had loved the valley before them. "Every reflection," she said, "is a small act of mercy. We see ourselves so that we may know we were here." The visitors listened in silence, some with tears in their eyes. When they left, they spoke of Ravenshollow as a sanctuary, a place where memory was not a burden, but a blessing. One evening, as the last of the guests departed and twilight deepened across the moors, Eleanor sat once more at her father's desk. Before her lay the journal he had begun, the one she had found in the Chamber of Mirrors. Its pages were almost full now. The final blank leaves waited like unlit candles. She dipped her pen in ink and began to write. "Those who came before me feared the weight of their memories. I have learned that memory does not chain us. It anchors us. The mirror does not imprison, it preserves." It is not the past that haunts, but the forgetting of it. She paused, letting the ink dry, and then wrote the closing line. May whoever holds this place after me remember that every reflection is a chance to love again. When she finished, she placed the journal on the mantel beneath the great mirror. The glass brightened faintly, acknowledging the gesture like a bowed head. Seasons slipped through Ravenshollow gently, each one leaving its quiet mark. Spring filled the valley with the scent of wet earth and new blossoms. Summer warmed the halls with gold. In autumn, light filtered through amber leaves, scattering 1,000 tiny suns across the mirrors. Eleanor grew older, though the peace she had found kept her face calm and untroubled. She took to wearing white in her later years, saying that it reminded her of morning mist, the color of memory just before it wakes. Visitors still came, sometimes to study, sometimes to pray. To each of them, she said the same words her mother once whispered to her. Look with your heart, not your eyes. And when they did, they saw what she saw. Light, warmth, and the presence of those who had loved and been loved here. One winter night, when the air outside lay thick with snow, and the manor glowed like a lantern in the valley, Eleanor lit every candle in the hall. She stood before the great mirror, her reflection wrapped in gold. Ravenshollow, she said softly, you have kept me well. Her voice trembled not with sadness but with gratitude. The mirror's surface shimmered gently, and within it she saw the figures of her parents, clear and bright, standing in a light beyond ordinary sight. They smiled. Eleanor felt no fear, no longing, only peace. Keep the light, she whispered, echoing the vow she had made years before. And the mirror glowed in reply, filling the room with a radiance so tender that even the shadows seemed to bow. When the villagers climbed the hill at dawn, they found Ravenshollow bathed in golden light. Every window reflected the sunrise, as if the whole house had turned to glass. Inside, the candles still burned, though no hand had touched them. Eleanor's journal rested open upon the mantel, a single line written in a graceful, steady hand. I am not gone. I am remembered. No one ever found her, yet the house remained warm, the mirrors gentle. And sometimes, at dusk, when the mist rolls down from the moors, travelers say they can see her silhouette in the great hall. A woman in white, standing before the mirror, her head bowed slightly as if listening. Not haunted, simply remembered. Years later, when the manor passed into the care of another family, they kept Eleanor's journal in a glass case and left the mirrors untouched. Visitors still came to see them, to catch their reflections in the soft glow of dusk. Some swore that when they smiled, their reflections smiled back a little brighter, as if the glass itself recognized kindness. The valley flourished again, and Ravenshollow stood not as a relic of sorrow, but as a beacon of memory. The mirror's inscription, once a warning, now read differently in the morning light. Look within, and remember.
And that was tonight's story. Some tales end with silence, others never end at all. They just wait in the dark, waiting for you.
You've been listening to Creepy Night, where every whisper tells a story, and every story leaves a shadow. Sleep well, if you can.